We can talk about the state of inequality in this nation. When you speak to the president, when you advise others in the White House, what is the character of our labor inequality right now?
Well, one of the things that we've seen since the president took office is in large part due to policies like the American Rescue Plan, like making sure that we wrapped our hands around the pandemic and got the job market back in motion. We've actually seen that this has been good for addressing inequality over the past, year and a half. What remains to be seen is whether or not we can continue those trends, but certainly the president was focused first and foremost on getting people back to work, and we know that for the vast majority of Americans, the vast majority of their income comes from their job. So if people have jobs, and especially jobs in an economy where wages are rising, that is core.
John, this is so important. We forget. We're so jaded in our Bloomberg world. If you're popping 200,000 or 300,000 jobs a month, non-farm payrolls, for any president, that's a success.
I would say the difference between Wall Street and Main Street, and there are many, let's be clear about that. On Wall Street, there's an addiction to trading off headline numbers and not talking about the disparity beneath those headline numbers. We hear phrases like the consumer's strong, the labor market is tight. Do you characterize those two things quite the same way?
Well, I think what we are looking at, and certainly what the Council of Economic Advisors is looking at more generally, is how many people have jobs? Where are those jobs? What does that look like for people? What is family economic security? Because that's the foundation of spending across our economy. Consumer spending is 70% of GDP. So making sure that we are attending to that basic fundamental fact. The president has said it so many times now that his goal is to build an economy from the bottom up and middle out. And that's a promise that he has made to the American people and one that he is working each and every day to keep.
This is a difficult question to answer, granted, but I imagine you've done some research on this. When you look at incomes right now, particularly for lower income Americans, what proportion of that wallet are they now spending on energy? Just how bad is it out there for them?
Certainly. The high prices in energy and also food affect lower income families more so than higher income families because it's a big portion of their income, and it's also money that they have to spend. If you have to put gas in your car in order to get to your job, that's not something that you have a choice over. So this is one of the reasons why the president has prioritized doing everything he can to get inflation down and to doing everything he can to get gas prices down, noting that we are here because we've been recovering from a global pandemic that has led to supply chain challenges around the world. This inflation is global. It's not just in the United States. And of course, you add to that the war in the Ukraine that Putin is waging. All of these things are making it harder for especially moderate and low-income Americans.
What they can do is a question that we've been asking all morning. What can you do? What can you do to actually offset any of this pain for Americans right now? We've talked about the trial balloons that are floating outside the White House on almost a weekly basis right now. We've heard about a fuel rebate. We've heard about all kinds of things, removal of Chinese tariffs. Proposals that aren't being executed on, at least I haven't seen them. What can you do, and what do you expect to happen?
Well, so the president's been very clear in focusing on what he has control over. So one of the things that he did early on that I think has been incredibly important has been releasing oil from the Strategic Petroleum Reserve. So working with our allies around the world, making sure that oil was available in this time of need when we do have these supply side shortages. The president has also, over the past couple of weeks, been working with refiners. We know that one of the challenges is that many refineries, too many, shut down over the pandemic. Capacity has been constrained. The president is working and has asked his energy secretary to work with refiners to see what they can do to get things flowing again, but also noting that because of high oil prices, because of high gas prices, these folks are making a lot of money, so they have resources to make those investments.
Down the hall from your office in the White House is a political raging battle over, say, how to take Pennsylvania at the midterms, how to take Pennsylvania in 2024. All of that is about the rage of the middle class, either Republican or Democrat, over the inequalities, which you've written about in your acclaimed book, Unbound. How do we address in this nation the idea that technology benefits the haves? Technology maybe benefits all of society, but technology burdens and lowers the outcome, the standard of living for the great middle class. How do we make technology a friend of people that want to vote Democrat?
Well, a number of the things that the president has focused on are about that, and maybe your viewers don't quite see the connection. So let me outline a few of them. So one of them is early on, the president put out an all-of-government effort around market structure and competition. Let's make sure that markets are fair and that they deliver for the American people, including.
But I don't mean to interrupt, but this is important. There's a huge body of people of all political persuasions who feel it's rigged. It's rigged here at Lafayette Square. It's rigged in the inner Northwest District of Washington as well. How do we regain the trust of the middle class that institutions can lead to a better life?
You do it by delivering. So you think of some of the things that the president's delivered on just in recent months. Things like making sure that prices on ocean shipping are fair. And so many of the things that we buy come on a ship that comes from overseas. But that process has been circumscribed by a small number of firms. So the president is using his tools to say, let's make sure that those prices that people are paying are fair.
Is he blocked by Republicans?
Well, so here's the thing. The executive branch does have a lot of power when it comes to enforcing antitrust laws. The president has made clear that price fairness is a #1 goal, and that feeds through the whole economy. And he's also prioritized making sure that if you are a worker in a market where there are few employers for your services, that those markets can be more fair, more open. And I think that's one of the ways that you can see the role of technology in the kinds of algorithms that affect who's hired, who's fired, what pay is. These are issues that the president is brought to the fore. But the other thing that he's prioritized day in and day out is allowing workers to join unions. That's one of the ways that we address inequality. It's one of the ways that we think about how the economy can deliver for working people and how it can be fair and build that trust through democratic institutions on the ground in workplaces all across the United States.
Keep hearing that word fair. And you and I have had this conversation before. It sometimes makes it sound like something nefarious is happening in certain places. The president over the weekend said this: "My message to the companies running gas stations and setting prices at the pump is simple. This is a time of war and global peril. Bring down the price you are charging at the pump to reflect the cost you're paying for the product, and do it now." Jeff Bezos came out and tweeted the following. I'm sure you read it. "Inflation is far too important a problem for the White House to keep making statements like this. It's either straight-ahead misdirection or a deep misunderstanding of basic market dynamics. I'm not going to accuse you of the latter. I want to talk about the former." Where's that messaging coming from?
The president has made clear that his #1 goal is delivering for the American people. We are in a time of crisis. We are in a time of war where the president and our allies, we are supporting the Ukrainian people. Congress is engaged in this effort, both sides of the aisle, to say this is an important priority. And one of the consequences is this high price of oil because of global trends.
You didn't answer his important question. Everyone, Heather, everyone in the nation wants to know the answer to the question Mr. Farrell just asked you, which is who is advising the president on shockingly naive price theory over a gallon of gas?
So the president is not shockingly naive, and we are in this moment of global crisis in terms of energy, and he is using the tools at his disposal to make sure that the prices that people pay at the pump are fair. So what we know in oil prices is that the prices can rise very quickly. It can take a long time for those prices to recalibrate and to come back down, and he's saying do that faster. You have the capacity to do so. You're making profits. But the important thing is that he's using the tools at his disposal given this very challenging situation.
Is this central planning now? Is that what this has come to?
How is that central planning?
Are we going to sit here and decide what's fair, what's not fair, and then go on Twitter and say this is unfair, bring your prices down? But is markets or is it not markets? Is it capitalism or is it central planning? Where's this White House going?
One of the things that the president has prioritized is understanding the way that concentration across markets has affected the American people and is affecting markets. We know when there are very few players, this is Econ 101. You know when there's a monopoly that there is more price setting power. And that's one of the things that we know about what's
Heather,
happening.
Thank you.